Coming up next, the most shocking twist yet. At the very moment Jack signs a multi-million-dollar contract to change his life forever, he has no idea he's also signing his beloved wife's death warrant. While the celebratory champagne is flowing, Tien is fading away in a pool of blood on a deserted back road after a brutal ambush. Who is the killer? And why has a former mother-in-law suddenly appeared to do the unthinkable? Don't look away, because the truth we're about to uncover will send chills down your spine. Will justice be served? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications to join Jack and his daughter on their journey to demand the truth. The winter sun wasn't harsh like the summer heat. It was thin and delicate, filtering through the leaves like golden threads woven across the old brick yard. Jack took a deep breath. The scent of freshly sawn cinnamon wood was rich and sharp, a mellow spice rising under the heat of the saw blades. It was the scent of a new beginning. He wiped the sweat from his forehead with his frayed sleeve, his right hand gripping a heavy hammer while his left glided over the smooth wood. Every grain told a story, and today they were telling a story of protection. Hold it steady for me, you two. Jack set his voice low but steady with confidence. Tien knelt beside him, her slender but strong hands pressing the plank firmly against the vertical frame. She smiled a gentle smile, as if the sunlight itself was resting on her lips. I've got it. Go ahead and nail it. It's not going anywhere. At her feet, little Anna was a spark of joy in the rhythm of their work. One of her sandals had slipped halfway off her tiny rosy heel, touching the cold ground, but she didn't care. Her small hands patted the wood, mimicking her father's rhythm. I'm helping Daddy. I'm building the house too. Her giggles drifted through the air, making the winter chill feel a world away. Not far off, Mother Loy and Uncle Dung worked like a seasoned team. Uncle Dung, with the calloused hands of a lifelong laborer, held the short wooden slats with precision. Mrs. Loy held the nails, the steady clack-clack of the hammer ringing out with purpose. Without a word, just a glance, they knew exactly what the other needed. Jack glanced at the old bamboo gate lying discarded in the corner of the yard. It was rotted from years of heavy rain, the same gate Tien had to struggle with every time she moved her bike, fighting with rusted wire. He joked, "This cinnamon wood fence is going to be way stronger than that bamboo mom. The rain just makes it smell better. It won't rot. From now on, you and my wife can come and go like you're strolling through a park." But behind the steady beat of the hammer, Jack's mind was a battlefield. Every nail driven in felt like a number, dancing on a balance sheet. Ming Hung. That name was both a dream and a nightmare. It was the biggest project his small company had ever touched. If it worked, Jack could finally buy Tien that new sewing machine she'd been dreaming of, and he could enroll Anna in the best preschool in town. But capital those two words felt like a ton of bricks. One small mistake in the material cost one delay in funding, and the Min Hung monster would swallow his entire career whole. Here is the translation of the second part of your story into natural, native-level American English. I've kept the tone intimate and emotional while ensuring the dialogue sounds like a real conversation. He looked down at his hands, calloused and marked with fresh scratches from the cinnamon wood. He was betting everything on this project. Last night, he'd stayed up until dawn, staring at blueprints, wondering if he was being too reckless, putting his family's entire future on such a shaky scale. Jack's gaze drifted from the wood and caught Tien's eyes. He froze. For a split second, the smile vanished from his wife's face, replaced by a pained wince. She paused to catch her breath, her hand trembling as she lightly rubbed her left arm. She thought he hadn't noticed and quickly regained her composure, but Jack had already seen the deep exhaustion etched in her eyes. How long had it been since she'd actually rested? Tien had always been the one to keep the fire burning, the silent force behind every one of his decisions. But it seemed she was hiding something about her health. Maybe it was just muscle pain from overworking, or perhaps a hidden anxiety she didn't want to burden him with, while the Min Hung project was so tense. He wanted to drop the hammer, take her hand, and ask, "Where does it hurt?" But he knew Tien. She would just smile and say, "I'm fine, just finish the fence." Her silent sacrifice made his chest tighten. By noon, the fence was finished. It stood sturdy and golden in the sun, wrapping around Mother Loy's green vegetable garden like a giant wooden hug. The family gathered on the porch, sipping hot tea and snacking on homemade peanut brittle that was perfectly crunchy and sweet. The scent of ginger tea mingled with the aroma of cinnamon wood, creating a strangely peaceful atmosphere. Jack took Tien's hand, looking her straight in the eyes. "You're amazing at everything, Tien. Without you holding those planks, I wouldn't have been able to drive a single nail straight." Tien leaned her head on his shoulder. Anna had fallen asleep in her mother's lap, one tiny hand still clutching a scrap of leftover wood. Jack whispered, not just for her to hear, but as a vow to himself, "Once this job is done, I'm going to build a small shed next to the garden. It'll be a space just for you and Anna, so you two can have room for your things instead of being cramped in the old house." The fence was done, but the barriers in Jack's heart remained. He knew tomorrow would bring more numbers, more pressure, and his wife's hidden pain. But at least for now, under this winter sun, they were sheltered by their love and the fragrant cinnamon wood. As the deep red sunset bled behind the bamboo groves, Jack saw Mother Loy and Uncle Dung to the gate. Their humble waves and Uncle Dung's laughter echoed through the quiet outskirts. He turned back inside to find Tien carefully brushing wood dust out of Anna's hair. "Tonight, I'm taking you two out to eat. Just for tonight." Jack said, his voice a mix of firm and tender. They chose a small restaurant tucked deep in an alley, a place with simple wooden tables and warm yellow lights. After dropping Anna off with the owner, a family friend, to play with some toys, Jack and Tien sat across from each other. The candlelight flickered, reflecting in his wife's dark eyes. "Do you remember?" Tien asked, her voice as soft as a breeze. "The first time we met? No candles, no flowers, not even music." Jack laughed, the memory rushing back like a slow-motion movie. How could I forget the construction site was so dusty, and the sound of the drills was deafening? You were a fresh-out-of-college site accountant, wearing an oversized hard hat, holding your nose because of all the dust. And there, I was drenched in sweat and covered in dirt from hauling wood. Tien was visibly moved, her hand resting gently on Jack's. I remember thinking back then, this guy is so stubborn. He worked like there was no tomorrow. I never dared to dream of this house of a garden with a cinnamon wood fence or a daughter calling us mom and dad. It all feels like a long, beautiful dream. Jack squeezed her hand. He knew that to make this dream a reality, Tien had sacrificed her youth, suppressing her own pain and anxiety to be his rock. Just as their conversation reached its most intimate point, as they began discussing the risks of the Minhung project, Jack's phone on the table began to vibrate violently. The screen lit up with his secretary's name. Jack hesitated, a strange gut feeling chilling his spine. He signaled to his wife and pressed the phone to his ear. "Hello, what's going on?" On the other end, his secretary's voice was shaking with excitement. "Jack, the director of the Minhung Group, just called. They want to meet you right now at the downtown cafe to officially sign the contract. They said they don't want to wait until next week. They want to break ground immediately." Jack bolted upright, his wooden chair screeching loudly against the floor. His heart hammered against his ribs. He could hear the blood rushing in his ears. He looked at Tien, his lips moving, but no words came out. Tien understood everything just by looking at his face. She didn't ask questions. She just smiled, her eyes brimming with pride. She stood up, straightened his collar, and smoothed the small wrinkles on his shoulders. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice full of strength. "They saw the heart you put into every blueprint. Go, Jack. Congratulations, Mr. Director." The downtown cafe was a world away from the small eatery they had just left. It was elegant, quiet, and smelled of old money. Jack walked in to find the Minhung representative already waiting, a thick stack of documents spread across the table. They didn't waste time on small talk. The director looked at Jack with the sharp, discerning gaze of a man who had seen it all. "I chose you not just because your bid was competitive, but because I know you're the kind of man who actually picks up the hammer and measures the wood himself." The Minhung project needs a craftsman's soul, not just a businessman's numbers. Jack picked up the fountain pen. The moment the nib touched the paper, a stray ray of late afternoon sun pierced through the large glass window, illuminating the contract. It was a surreal coincidence, as if the universe itself was witnessing a decade of his hard work finally paying off. The pen glided across the paper with a satisfying, effortless scratch. The moment he finished signing, Jack felt his chest expand. The monster of capital had finally been tamed. The weight of 1,000 pounds evaporated, replaced by a surge of fierce confidence. He stepped out of the cafe, taking a deep breath of the crisp evening air. He pulled out his phone and dialed Tien. When she picked up, he could only manage one short sentence. "Tien, I did it. From now on, you don't have to worry anymore." On the other end, Jack heard his wife break into sobs, tears of joy after so many days of holding it all in. He looked up at the night sky. The stars were beginning to twinkle like silver nails driven into the darkness, as steady and bright as his family's future. Leaving the cafe, Jack felt like he was walking on air. The contract in his breast pocket radiated a strange warmth, or perhaps it was just the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Jack stopped in front of a high-end jewelry store on the main street. The brilliant LED lights from the display cases spilled onto the sidewalk, making the diamond necklaces inside shimmer. Tien deserves the very best, Jack thought. He pictured her face when he broke the news. She would cry, for sure, but those would be the tears that finally closed a chapter of hardship. He reached for his phone, ready to call her right then, but stopped. He wanted the surprise to be bigger. He wanted to race home, sweep her off her feet, and shout, "We won!" Jack had no idea that just a few miles away, His world was shattering. Twilight settled over the dirt path, leading toward the edge of the forest, where the only sound was the chirping of crickets and the deepening shadows under the trees. Tien was leading little Anna by the hand, her shoulders heavy from a basket of unsold oranges. Her legs were leaden, and that dull ache in her arm was flaring up again, but she still managed to smile for her daughter. "Almost home, sweetie. I'll make that sour soup you and Daddy love for dinner." But the smile died instantly as two figures loomed out from the bend in the road. One was a man with a face like stone and a long scar running down his cheek, a notorious local debt collector. Beside him was Mrs. Tui, a distant neighbor who barely spoke to them. Her face was a mess of tears and sheer desperation. "Tien, please save me. You're the only one who can help." Mrs. Tui lunged forward, grabbing Tien's sleeve, her voice trembling. "I was a fool. I signed a loan for my deadbeat son, and now they're going to kill me. 50 million, who? Please lend me 50 million, I'm begging you." Tien froze. 50 million. That was the money Jack had scraped together, dollar by dollar, for the material deposit on the Minhung project. That was Anna's milk money. It was the only thing keeping their family from being buried in debt. Mrs. Tui calmed down. Tien said firmly, prying the woman's hands off her. Her gaze turned as cold and hard as steel. "I can't help you. This money is my husband's blood, sweat, and tears. It's my daughter's future. I won't destroy my family to fix someone else's mistake. Please go home." The scarred man stepped forward, his breath reeking of cheap cigarettes. He let out a low, guttural laugh, his eyes locking onto the thin gold necklace around Tien's neck, the most precious thing she owned, a gift from Jack for their 5th anniversary. "If you don't have the cash, the gold will do," he hissed, reaching out a brutal hand to grab her throat. "Get off me! This is mine!" Tien screamed. A wife and mother's instinct made her unnaturally brave. She clutched her purse and pushed Anna behind her. "Anna, run, and get Daddy!" But the 4-year-old could only cling to her mother's hem, her heart-wrenching cries echoing through the empty fields. The debt collector lost his patience. He began to shove and pull with violent force. A frail woman was no match for a man of his size. He swung his arm, delivering a massive shove to seize the purse. In that horrific moment, Tien's foot slipped on a round, moss-covered stone. Her body lost its balance, and she went flying backward. Crack! A dry, sickening sound echoed through the clearing. The back of Tien's head slammed directly into the sharp edge of a large, jagged rock sitting by the side of the road. This next chapter is incredibly dark and gripping. Here is the translation into natural, native-level American English, focusing on the heavy atmosphere and the chilling contrast between the characters. The world suddenly flipped upside down for Tien. The gray winter trees blurred into nothingness. A violent surge of pain hit her for a split second, then vanished, replaced by a terrifying numbness. Blood began to flow hot and thick, soaking into the dust of the road and staining her white shirt a deep crimson. Mrs. Tui stood frozen, her sobs catching in her throat. The debt collector saw the puddle of blood spreading rapidly, and his face went pale as a sheet. She's dead," he gasped. Without a second thought, he turned and bolted into the darkness. Mrs. Tui panicked and ran after him, leaving the woman to fade away on the deserted road. Little Anna collapsed to her knees beside her mother. her tiny hands pressed against Tien's cooling cheeks. Mommy, wake up. Don't sleep here, it's too cold. Anna's crying faded into choked up hiccups. She tried with all her might to shake her mother's shoulder, but Tien's eyes remained half closed, her dull gaze fixed on the stars just beginning to appear in the sky. In her delirium, she saw the fragrant cinnamon fence again. She saw Jack smiling and talking about the little shed he would build for them. She wanted to reach out and touch him, but the darkness finally swallowed her whole. At that same moment, in the town center, Jack hopped onto his motorcycle. He opened his phone and looked at his wallpaper, a photo of his wife and daughter, laughing in the sun. He hit the call button, his heart full of hope. The phone rang, once, twice, 3 times. Tien's phone lay in the dirt next to the rock, its screen lighting up with the name, My Love. The upbeat ringtone played on, sounding hauntingly out of place against the child's wailing and the terrifying silence of approaching death. Jack frowned, a sudden sharp pang of anxiety tightening his chest. Why isn't she picking up? He revved the engine and sped toward the back road, completely unaware that every mile he traveled was a desperate race against the Reaper to save the woman who was his entire world. The ringtone from Tien's battered purse continued to chime relentlessly in the stillness. Anna stayed there, her tiny, trembling hands trying to wipe away the blood trickling from her mother's head. Just as utter despair took hold, a shadow loomed from over the hill. It was Mrs. Lo Tien's former mother-in-law. This woman had harbored a bitter grudge against Tien for years, ever since she chose to walk away from a humiliating marriage to Mrs. Lo's gambling-addicted son. Mrs. Lo was heading home late from the market, laden with bags, still muttering curses about her own poverty under her breath. Seeing someone lying motionless on the road, she stopped in her tracks. The dim flashlight from her old phone swept across the victim's pale face. Tien! Mrs. Lu gasped. Her voice wasn't filled with concern, but with a sharp, malicious surprise. Seeing an adult little Anna grabbed onto hope like a lifeline, she sobbed hysterically. Grandma, please help my mommy. She fell. There's so much blood. Mrs. Liu stepped closer. In that first second, basic human instinct might have told her to call for an ambulance. But then her flashlight beam snagged on Tien's neck. Under the flickering light, the golden glint of the gold necklace Jack's gift glimmered with a haunting allure. She swallowed hard. A cold, calculated greed began to take root in her mind. Her son was drowning in debt, and her own house was falling apart. This necklace had to be at least a few ounces of solid gold enough to keep her pockets full for months. Mom. Tien groaned feebly, her pale bluish lips trembling. She still had a final flicker of consciousness. Seeing Mrs. Lu's silhouette, a fragile spark of hope lit up in her eyes. She tried to reach out, clutching the hem of the woman's clothes as if begging for help. But Mrs. Liu took a step back, her expression turning chillingly detached and cruel. Karma's a bitch. She muttered, her voice low enough only for her and the child to hear. You left my son years ago for that carpenter. Now look at you lying here waiting to die. Let's see if this gold can save your life now. She leaned down, ignoring Anna's heart-wrenching cries. Her thin, withered hands brutally clawed at the necklace. Because the clasp was too secure, she didn't hesitate. She gritted her teeth and yanked with all her might, tearing the skin on Tien's neck and leaving a bright red welt across her ghostly skin. "What are you doing to my mommy? Give it back." Anna lunged forward to grab it, but Mrs. Lou violently shoved the little girl to the ground. "Shut up, you brat." Mrs. Lou snapped, her eyes bulging. "Your mother is as good as dead. Why let this go to waste?" With the necklace secured in her pocket, she glanced around nervously and hurried off into the night. She left a child wailing and a woman fading away in a pool of blood, never once looking back. Greed had completely smothered the last spark of her humanity. Not far away, the roar of an engine broke the silence. Jack was flying down the dirt road. His heart was pounding against his ribs. A dark premonition wouldn't let him slow down. "Tien, wait for me, I'm coming." As Jack's headlights swept across the path, he slammed on the brakes. In the middle of the road, a small figure was hunched over something dark. Anna's voice was hoarse, her cries reduced to long, ragged gasps. Jack threw himself off the bike, his legs nearly giving out. He saw her. Tien lay there, her long hair matted with blood, her collar torn and a raw red scratch on her neck, a silent witness to the cruelty that had just occurred. Tien. Jack screamed his voice, breaking in the night air. He scooped her up, feeling the warmth steadily leaving her body. Anna clung to her father's leg, sobbing through her gasps. "The lady, she took Mommy's necklace. She pushed me. Daddy saved Mommy." Jack was stunned. He didn't have time to wonder about some lady or the missing jewelry. He only knew that if he didn't act this second, he would lose her forever. The multi-million-dollar contract in his pocket was crushed as he knelt on the ground. At this moment, all the money and the brilliant career meant absolutely nothing compared to Tien's faint, flickering heartbeat. The ride from that dirt path to the county hospital was the longest 20 minutes of Jack's life. He steered with one hand while the other held Tien tightly in front of him, her head resting on his shoulder. Anna sat behind him, gripping his back, too terrified to even cry out loud. "Don't you dare leave me, do you hear me?" Jack whispered into her ear, his tears mixing with his sweat. "The contract is signed. We're getting the new shed. Anna's going to a good school. You have to wake up to see it." At the hospital, Tien was rushed straight into the ICU. The hallway lights were a sterile, haunting white. Jack stood there, his hands still stained with his wife's blood. He stared down at his palms, then up at the clock. Every second that ticked by felt as heavy as lead. Behind him, Anna had finally collapsed from exhaustion, sleeping on a long metal bench, with her face still smeared with dirt and dried tears. Just then, the ICU doors swung open. The doctor stepped out, his face etched with concern. "Are you the family? It's critical. She has severe brain trauma from a hard impact and has lost too much blood. We need to operate immediately, but the success rate is only 50-50. I need you to sign this consent form." Jack took the pen. Just a few hours ago, he had held a pen to sign a contract that would change his life. But this time, the pen felt 10,000 times heavier. He signed his name, his hands shaking so violently that his signature was barely recognizable. All he could see in his mind was Tien, smiling in the winter sun, holding the cinnamon wood planks steady for him to nail. The fence he had just finished was standing strong to protect the garden. So why couldn't he protect the most important woman in his life? Across town, in a dark corner, Mrs. Lou sat under the dim glow of an oil lamp, fingering the gold necklace with greedy eyes. She had no idea that her crime had been burned into the memory of a 4-year-old child. The county hospital at night had a specific smell, sharp disinfectant mixed with the biting chill of the long, empty hallways. Jack sat on a peeling metal bench, his fingers interlaced so tightly his knuckles were white. On his shoulder, little Anna had drifted off her breath, occasionally hitching from the trauma of her nightmares. The heavy doors of the ICU remained shut, separating Jack from Tien. Inside, his wife lay surrounded by a forest of wires and machines, the rhythmic beep, beep, sounding both steady and fragile. Every pulse on the monitor made Jack's heart tighten. He looked down at his shirt. Tien's blood had dried into a deep, dark brown. This was the blood of the woman who had shared meals of plain rice and vegetables with him, who never uttered a single complaint when he poured every cent they had into lumber. The Minna-hung contract in his back pocket now felt like a slab of stone. He pulled it out, looked at the formal print, and instinctively crushed it in his fist. What is the money for what's a big project worth if you aren't here with me? Jack whispered, hot tears streaming down his rugged face. In the shadows of the hallway, Jack began to drift back. He remembered that morning when the winter sun was still dancing through the leaves. He remembered Tien's smile as she held the planks for him. "I've got it." Her voice echoed in his head. She had always held his life steady. She had always been the anchor while he drove every nail into their future. And yet when she needed him most, when she was facing those monsters on that deserted road, he was sipping coffee and signing a piece of paper. Regret sliced through him like a blade. He thought back to Anna's broken words. "The lady took Mommy's necklace. She pushed me." Who was that woman who could be so heartless as to rob a dying woman of the only keepsake around her neck? Jack made a silent vow to himself. Even if he had to tear this whole town apart, he would find whoever did this. But first, he needed Tien to wake up. He needed her to scold him for taking her out to dinner. He needed her to smile and tell him that this was all just a bad dream. At the same time, in a dilapidated house at the far end of the county, Mrs. Lou sat huddled under the dim glow of an oil lamp. The gold necklace lay on the scarred wooden table, shimmering with a guilty light. She picked it up and bit it. It was real gold, a massive score. But strangely, she didn't feel happy. The wind whistling through the cracks in the window sounded exactly like little Anna's crying, and the faint scent of cinnamon wood drifting over from Jack's direction made her skin crawl. Mrs. Lou heard the distant wail of an ambulance siren. She knew it was likely the one carrying Tien. Her greed had led her down a path with no exit. Panicked, she shoved the necklace into a tin box and hid it under her bed, her heart racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tien's glazed look pleading for help. The worst punishment isn't prison. It's being haunted by a soul that hasn't passed on, but was abandoned by someone they once called Mother. As the first rays of morning light filtered through the hospital windows, the night doctor stepped out. His face was worn with exhaustion, but his eyes had softened. Jack snapped to his feet like a coiled spring. Anna jolted awake too, clinging to her father's neck. "Doctor, how is my wife?" The doctor pulled off his mask and let out a long sigh. The surgery was a technical success. We managed to remove the hematoma. However, she hasn't regained consciousness. She's fallen into a deep coma. Now it all depends on her own will to live and the care of her family. Jack's knees buckled. She wasn't dead, but she hadn't truly come back yet either. He asked for permission to see her. In the stark white room, Tien looked smaller and paler than ever. Jack took her frail hand and pressed it against his cheek. He felt a faint warmth, a spark of life as thin as a strand of silk. Tien, I'm here. Anna's here. Jack choked out. The fence is finished. It's strong, Tien. Nothing can hurt you anymore. Please wake up. I'll build you that shed. I'll buy you all the yarn you want to knit sweaters for Anna. Just don't sleep anymore. Little Anna climbed onto the bed and gave her mother a soft kiss on the cheek. Mommy, I won't let my sandals fall off anymore. Wake up and take me to the market, okay? The father and daughter's cries filled the quiet room. Outside, the Min-hung project was still waiting, and those cinnamon planks were still sitting there, waiting for the craftsman's touch. But for Jack, the entire world had shrunk down to the size of Tien's motionless hand.